One. Hi, welcome to another Word of Torah with Rod Bryant and Moshe Avrams. He is looking so smart and intelligent and handsome, and we're looking forward to learning Torah together. You are in Eretz Israel. Lovely to be in the land. Thousands of people are coming to the Holy Land. You would think they would be running away from the Holy Land, but thousands of people are wanting to come see the miracles that are taking place in the land right now. And Baruch Hashem, I feel so happy to be able to talk to you today while you're in the land and I'm here in the great state of Texas, the second Israel of the world. So we're going to get right in. We're in the next series or next episode, which I think is around 6. But we're going to quit counting because we don't want to bore you with the statistics. But we have a great class. We're in the first chapter still, and we're right around the 20th verse. And so let's begin to open up the text. Remember, guys, if you want to get a hold of Moshe Avrams, you can write him Moshe R. Avrams at gmail.com, or you can send us an email at nativcenter@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have any questions, make sure you send all the hard ones to Moshe, all the easy, fluffy ones to me, or the praise and adoration to me. I would appreciate it. So let's get right into the text. Moshe, I'm eager to get started. So here we go.
Absolutely. So, it's funny, like doing this class from Israel, like you say, one of the cool things is when you get into the story and you start talking about the story of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, all the time you mention places that are still in Israel and still have those names.
And right down the road.
Yeah, that's it. Like sometimes the students are like, oh, is that place still there? I'm like, yeah. I went there the other day. There's a mall there now. It's the funniest thing.
Think about this.
These beautiful places.
Abraham spent most of his time in Gaza, what is now called Gaza. Yeah.
Right.
It's incredible.
I just wanted to add on something because people will be coming from all kind of different start points. Often when I'm doing the class, I'll say, just familiarize yourselves with the alphabet before you start, and we can assume that you have those notes. But I thought I'll just start adding in a little bit of a refresher as we go for things like vowels and consonants and things like this. Not to do a whole class on it, but just to say like that these nikudim, nikud is Hebrew for dot. There's just dots and lines and symbols are just a way of giving us vowels because Hebrew doesn't really have vowels. So this is the kind of Masoretes added these in the kind of Middle Ages. So this is a tseireh, it makes an A sound. I always remember this is called a segol, which makes an S sound. It's like 3 little eggs in a nest, so it makes an S sound. This chirik is lonely, so I always imagine it going, ee, like go all on my own. And then the next one here is patach, it makes an A sound. And this dot here, you can remember the cholam makes an O sound because it's over. So it's O when it's over. And then you have this little comments here. It's a tricky one. It could be like an or if you can use it the same as the patach. And when you see these 2 vertical dots, that means no vowel or almost no vowel. Like if it's impossible to do no vowel, you just do a little bump. But that's for things like like the word sphere. You go straight from the S into the PH, right? Oh, sorry. You're muted.
Repeat the word again because your microphone cut out. So what was
sorry. So like the word sphere in English, we just slide straight from the S into the PH without making a thing. That's this schwa is really good for that. So like, a kid learning to read might say Sophia and you're like, no, that's a lady's name, like sphere. So this is really good for just sliding from one to the same.
And let me point out, also go back to the or O?
Yeah, this comments here.
Right, no, the one next to it, the OH.
Oh, the O when it's over? Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So if you have a vav and it shows on the side, it gives you a sound, like a in the stomach punch or something like that.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So in fact, actually, let's go and find that in that first, because we have a few different vavs in this verse. Yes. And a good rule for a vav is if there's a vowel underneath it, you do a v and then vowel. And then vowel. But over here, this is the one you were talking about, isn't it? The gut punch one. So if there's a dot over it and there's nothing underneath, you don't actually make the v sound. You just do the O, right? And if there's a dot underneath the hook, you do U when it's under and O when it's over. That's my kind of very childish way of remembering.
And listen, to be honest, that was the hard part for me because I would get to that and I would have a hard time knowing O or U, or also
Yeah.
whether to pronounce the V part.
Right.
It take you a while, but you'll get it.
There's one more tricky one as well, which is like in this word, your faith, because the dot's directly above the vav, you just do O, like yo faith. Right?
Your faith, right?
But if it's to the sides, it can turn into a vo again. But that's rare. Don't worry, I'll point it out when it comes up.
But when you say to the side, you're talking about the top side, not the middle side.
Right.
And when it's a top side,
like to the left up here.
it can pronounce the v o.
Yeah. So that vav is a tricky character.
Well, it's only that they put that in the Hebrew to trick up us dyslexics.
Yeah. That's it. But the nice thing is we're going to go through the pronunciation of everything. So as we go through the verses, you're going to see every version of everything, and you're not going to notice you're absorbing it. Like you'll just be like, oh yeah, I didn't know what that was, but I keep on hearing you make this noise, so that must be that.
So the other day I watched a quick TikTok, and it was a little boy, and just a little above toddler, but speaking wise, and he's speaking in Hebrew. So I watch it, and I start crying, because my brain knew exactly what he was saying, but you understand what I'm saying? Like when your Hebrew is bad enough to where you can understand it, but you don't, I can't even explain it. It's like my brain knew it, but I was like, okay, did I just hear that right? And he was going, I want my Abba. Where's my Abba? And Mama saying, he'll be later. He'll come here later. But my Abba, it's my Abba. And he's crying. I'm like, oh.
Gets in the feels, doesn't it?
But Hebrew does that too. It's like that with any language. The more you spend time with it, pretty soon you just start picking it up.
Yeah, so. And it's a lot, but you're right. It's a lovely feeling when something connects and you go, oh, yeah, I know this one. And it's like the first word, in fact, that's going to happen for most people is this word here. Vayomer. That's because this is probably the most common word in the whole. It's certainly in the book of Bereshit, but maybe in the whole of the Chumash, this word comes up more than anything else. Because what you have is the root to speak, right? Amar is to speak. Yomer, without the vav, Yomer would be he will say, and Vayomer means he said. Like it flips the tense into past tense. So he said happens a lot in the Bible, right?
Absolutely.
Because a lot of the time it's God speaking to someone, which, although God doesn't have a gender explicitly, this isn't just masculine, but it's also the neutral sense. We use that for God. And also there's a lot of patriarchs, there's a lot of male prophets in the Bible, so they'll always have a yod because they're explicitly male, right? So if this is V'yomer Elohim, then we know that this is and God said. Now, obviously, we have the verb first and then who's doing the verb. But that's the common way. It's not the only way, but it's frequently the way in Hebrew that we put verb and then who's doing the verb and then more information next. So what did God say? Let's have a look at what God's saying in this. Now, just to remind you, last time we left off on V'yehi Erev and it was evening, V'yehi Voka and it was morning, Yom Revi'i, which is day 4.
Could you move your microphone up just a little bit more?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I'll just take it in hand for a moment.
Beautiful.
Stop me bumping the table. So we finished on Yom Revi'i, day 4, which means we're starting day 5 now, Yom Chamishi. So God said, V'yomer Elohim, Yisher Tzu. Now we've got a nice new function here. A minute ago, I told you that if you had V'yomer without the Vav, it would be future tense because it hadn't been flipped into the past tense, right?
Right.
Well, this here has the yod to say it's a future masculine or neutral verb. This is the verb. This says he or it will do it, but there's no vav to flip it into the past tense. So this here is a future tense. Something is going to happen, right? And the yod is telling you he or it will do it. We've got another function here. This gut punch u vav at the end, right? This is the vav with the u on it, u underneath the hook. Underneath the hook is a u.
Underneath the hook.
So this has a pluralizing effect. So instead of being he or it will do it, it makes it they will do it.
Is this the case? Is this every case it's like this?
There is one other case where you get an uvav at the end, and that's when there's a who construction. Who means he in Hebrew. Okay. So you can have a verb being done to him, and it can be what's a good example? I don't want to say it, but the yak lehu would be, and they eat him. That's just the first. I'm always thinking about food. I'm always thinking about eating. So by putting who on the end, that also has an uvav. then that would make it being done to him instead.
Okay, yeah.
But without the who, when it's just u, that means they are doing the verb. So we need to know what the verb is sharetz. And sharetz means it's the verb to swarm. Okay.
Right.
So the cool thing about this is sometimes we get the function in Hebrew and we get the noun as well. So if the verb sheretz means to swarm, this is a sheretz, a swarm, right? So the verb and the noun, they're basically the same word, right? We can tell from the grammar this is the verb, right? So this is the doing word and this is the object.
Right.
So it's the swarms, right? And they're so close that you start to pick up words and you get every version of it. You learn the word sheretz. This one's got a yod. This must be to swarm. This one's just on its own and it has so it must be the object. So those patterns are going to suddenly start sparking and you start connecting as well. And just as well to remind you, in the sheretz, we have this segol, which is like 3 little eggs in a nest. That makes an sound, just like egg. So this is sheretz. That's it, Sadi. So, V'yom Elohim, God said, Yishartsu, they will swarm, Hamayim. Right? Now, Hamayim, Mayim is water, and this is Hamayim. It's a little bit, you could interpret this one of two ways. You could say that the waters will swarm, as in they'll be full of a swarm, or something will swarm the waters. But actually, those two things mean the same thing. Like the waters themselves aren't going to be lots of waters coming together and wriggling, but something's going to swarm the waters, right? So what's going to swarm the waters? Well, a sheretz, which is a swarm. So a swarm will swarm the waters. But it tells us a little bit more information. And these words, even someone who is not as confident with Hebrew might recognize these already. You might know the word nefesh. See, segol, nefesh. So nefesh, most people know from the organization Nefesh B'Nefesh, right? Which means soul. It means soul with soul. It means soul to soul. And we say soul to soul in English. So a nefesh is a soul. What about chai? Well, most people know chai from l'chaim. So chai is life. So it's a nefesh chai, a living soul. But combined with the previous word, it's sheretz nefesh chai, a swarm of living souls. I mean, that's immediately enigmatic.
Yeah, that's huge. Yes.
That's right. We're kind of describing these things in very kind of interesting poetical ways. It doesn't just say, fish or lobsters, or, it says, comes a swarm of living souls. And it's really talking about these vast.
But it's describing the nature of what he's getting ready to place within the sea. They swarm.
Absolutely.
They run in schools. Yeah.
And they seem to have souls. They've got living souls. That's, they're not just these mindless automatons. It's life that we're studying. It's very basic life.
Right.
Very simple life. And we work up in complexity from there.
Correct.
People who are very into evolution are like, life started in the sea. We started off with, fish and stuff. And then they started crawling up onto the land. You're like, it's here in the Torah. Again, I always ask this question. How do Bronze Age desert-dwelling Hebrews know to start with plants and then fish? That's what we've done. Started with plants, then we went to fish.
Right.
So, V'yom Elohim, God said, Yishartsu hamayim, the waters will swarm. Sheretz nefesh chaya, a swarm of living souls. And v'of yofef. Now, what's happening here? I've gone too far.
What was the second word? Yofef?
Both your faith. Well, I'm going to show you something cool with this. So the lion here doesn't actually have a vowel on it. So there's no dots on this, but there's a vowel with a dot over it. And so to make this first noise, we're combining all three symbols. Often, if you want to know that an ayin is making an O sound, or even an aleph is making an O sound, it's often aleph and then vav with a dot over it, or ayin and then vav with a dot over it, and that makes an O sound. And this is a final fey. When the fey is in the beginning or the middle, the tail is curled under, but when it gets to the end of the word, the tail drops down. So this is oaf. And that is a flying thing. People like to translate this as a bird, but it's not a bird. It's just a flying thing. We don't know what it is that's flying yet, right? And so the thing is named after what it does. And what does it do? Yofef, right? So this is, again, you see there's two fays here. This is the fay in the middle with the tail's curled under. But when there's a fay at the end, the tail drops down. So you can see there's two fays next to each other, a middle and an end one. And again, we have ayin with a vav with a dot over. So this is O faith. This is the Tseire.
Yeah, and so just a reminder, anytime you see the Fae at the end, that's the way it's going to look like. It's always going to have that drop down. That's the Fae Sophite.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, although not every letter has a final form.
Correct. Only, 3 or 4 letters?
Yeah, I can't remember how many it is now. I'll have to count up as we go through.
Maybe it's only 2. Okay.
All of them except one have this idea that the tail drops down.
2.
So with if every other letter, like the tzadi, the tail drops down. The nun, it gets longer, the tail drops down. The kof, it's like the kof is like that, like a curly cur, and then at the end of the word it drops down and it's like that. So I'll point these out as we go, but the only one that doesn't do that is the mem. So you have a mem that's open in the middle of the beginning of the word, but at the end it closes. So this is the only one that doesn't have a tail that drops down. That's the exception.
Right.
The rest of them have a tail.
Yeah, the only 2 that I talked about, the mem and mem sophite, nun sophite, and this one.
Yeah, so nun is kind of, have we got a nun here on the page? There's a nun.
Yeah, there's a nun right there.
But at the end, the tail will drop
down straight. Yeah.
This is a Fae, but at the end, the tail will drop down. This is a Tzadi. Normally, its tail is tucked under it, but at the end, its tail drops down. So if you see a letter with a tail drop down, that's the end of a word. And that's what they're for, really. We don't have capital letters here. So a good way to read a lot of Hebrew letters and still be able to break up the words is if every now and again there's a final letter. So you go, well, that's the end of the word. The next one must be the beginning of the next word. So it just makes it a little easier to read.
Yeah.
So Ophir Faith is the flying things that fly.
Mm-hmm.
So again, everything is labeled by what it does, by its function. And Al Haaretz, what we have here, this is a really good one to know. You know this from El Al. El Al is a very optimistic kind of name for an airline. Yeah. It just means up and over, which sounds like a 1950s scout leader to me. Up and over, off we go. Yeah. So Al comes from the word Aliyah. If someone makes Aliyah to Israel, they're going up, they're ascending. Or if you get called up to the Torah, you get an aliyah to the Torah. So that's to go. So al means on. And haaretz, just like Haaretz Yisrael or your country, Rod, has got a very proud name. America in Hebrew is called Arotzat Habrit, which means Aretz is the land, Aratzot is the lands, plural, Habrit is of the covenant.
Think about that for a second. That's beautiful
name for America, the lands of the covenant, because it's the United States. It's united by this covenant everyone's entered into to be one united people. So Israel has called it Aratzat Habrit, the land of the covenant. Beautiful name for America.
Yes.
Your faith al haaretz, that fly on the earth. Al panei Rakia Hashemayim, and we encountered Rakia as the thinness, which is our way of describing the sky, and Hashemayim as the heavens. But what's Al Panei? Yeah. Well, Al is on, and Panei, we start off with the word Panna. Now this is your Panna.
Right.
You might have your grandmother come on and say, Eza Shana Punnam, who's, what a beautiful face, right? So your Panna is your face. But we have this function at the end, where if you have a yod and a tseire, this is the tseire vowel, which makes an A sound, and a yod at the end. If you have both of these, it doesn't work with just one, but if you have both of these, it means of. So instead of panna, face, it's panei, face of. So I'll always color it pink, don't worry. Whenever we have a yod and a tseire together, making that of function, I'll always make it pink so it stands out until we're really good at spotting it. So al panei rakia is on the face of the thinness, Hashemayim, the heaven. So that's where that's the Ophir faith for flying on the earth and on the face of the heavens and the sky. Good. So that's the beginning of day 5, and that's what we're. But then we get a bunch of other really interesting stuff. A couple of them are quite weird. I'm just going to move this because this is a little bit big. It's covering over one of my words. Sorry about that. So we have V'yivra Elohim. Now this is actually a really important word. It looks like the word. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong. Here we go. This is where we are. It looks like the word Baruch, which I just changed to by mistake, but it's not Baruch. It's V'yivra, and the root here is bara, bet resh aleph. Right? We actually know this from the first sentence of the whole Torah, because the first sentence is Bereshit bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created, and bara is the word for to create, like to create from nothing. So with the yod, it makes it he will create, and the vav makes it he created. And of course, the next word here is Elohim. So God created et hataninim. And this is weird, right? Because in modern Hebrew, taninim are crocodiles. right? But that's not what it means here. We took the name for crocodiles from this word in the Torah. And this, we weren't talking about crocodiles when the Torah said this. This is sea monsters, right? And when Jews went down to Egypt and saw crocodiles, they went, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the sea monster. That is a terrifying."
Yeah.
anyone who's listening in from Florida knows these things are wrong. And
until you're Jonah and you're trying to get regurgitated on the shore.
Yeah. I don't even know what I was just doing. Yeah, absolutely. weirdly about that, there seems only to have been one of them.
Right.
Like maybe when it says made, because it was a specific creature made for this purpose. That's the weird thing about that.
Right.
And maybe it was a species of, maybe when it says an animal, maybe it means like, the cheetah is an animal, but actually it's, a lot of animals. Maybe it's like that. But it's possible that it was literally just one of these existed for the purpose of gobbling up Jonah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, but whichever way it was, it's Taninim, and it's et ha-Taninim ha-Gedolim. And when you dig into this root, it takes you on a weird little journey, which we don't have time for now, but it's worth doing. Try and find what is the 3-letter word root of Taninim. Ha-Taninim ha-Gedolim, the great big sea monsters. V'et. Now, we've had this function before. In the first sentence of Torah, we have the et, which is the object marker. So that's what's being created. When we have v'et, that means there's another object that's being created. Oh, look, there's another v'et here. So we can tell already et. There are 3 separate things being created in this sentence, right? V'yivra Elohim et hataninim hagadolim, the great big sea monsters. V'et kol nefesh hachaya. Well, we encountered that before. Nefesh is soul and chaya is living. So nefesh chaya is the living soul. But then we get another verb here, haromeset. And that can best be described as this. Romeset is the kind of scuttly, creepy things that make you, when you see them, you go, so that's the maybe a little bit visceral, but it's the best way to describe that act.
It's true. The creeping things.
Yeah, absolutely. The creeping things that give you the creeps. I think the creeps is named after the creeping things.
I believe so. Yeah, you get the creeps from creeping things.
Right. So but they're still described as a nefesh chaya, a living soul. So these creepy things are still a living soul. It's kol, all, nefesh, soul, chaya, that lives, haromeset, that crawls. Asher, that's my word that I geek out about, because it's a boring word. It's that. Who cares about that? But it means whatever comes afterwards is more information about what went before. So it's the remeset, the things that crawl. That asher shartzu hamayim. Now, that's the word we got before. In the first thing, we had yishartzu hamayim sheretz nefesh. So we're still talking about the same act. Right. We're still talking about the same process. It's just carrying on to the next verse. So it's kol nefesh chaya haromeset, that crawls, asher shartzu hamayim, that swarms. You see how it's got an u, so it's they swarm hamayim. So we weren't talking about fish in the beginning. We were talking about crawly, creepy things in the sea, which, there's plenty of those if you go down to the bottom. And it says as well, now this is interesting, we got this when we were talking about plants, lemineihem. The first time we got it to lemino, and a vav at the end of the word with a little yarmulke on top of it means his. Lemino means his kinds. And then we got leminehu, and hu means him. So it's another way of saying his kinds. But this is lemineihem, and hem means them, to their kind, lemineihem. Right? So their species or their category, or however you want to describe it. So we have hu means he, and he means she, and hem means them. Now, that's very annoying, because we have a different meaning for he, and we have a different. So it feels a lot, but we have to give it up to Hebrew, because Hebrew was before English. So we've misaligned this, but hem means them.
Chuckle and move on.
Yeah, right. It panics people, because they go, how am I gonna remember it's the wrong way around? Listen, everything's the wrong way around. When you see it, you go, it's the wrong way around. Whatever I'm expecting, it's the other one.
Right.
But we're going to see it enough that we get really comfortable with it. And I'll color them differently. So who, I'll put like a purple around the outside. Who means he, so I'll put a purple around the outside. And when it's he, which means she, I'll put a pink around the outside and be old-fashioned and sexist and give you sexist colors.
That'll be good.
So, this is our third et. Va'et kol
oaf. This is the flying things, right?
Right.
And instead of being oaf your face, it's oaf kanaf. Now, kanaf is a corner. Like, for example, on the corner of my undergarment, I'm supposed to tie tzitzis, right? On the corner, on the kanaf. It even says in the Shema that I'm supposed to tie them on the kanaf of my big day, of my garments. So where's the corner on a flying thing? Say, for example, we had a duck in the room. If I had a duck right beside me now and I stretched it out, where would the corners be?
It would be the wings on the tips.
Right.
Of the wings, yeah.
That's the thing.
Actually, actually, that is the wings. It has flying instruments.
Absolutely. I mean, it's weird though, because if you think about it, if you look at the shape of a flattened out bird, there are corners. It's just weird that it flies by its corners, and the Torah doesn't make a distinction between the two. It's just like, yeah, corners, that'll do. So it's kol of kanaf, which really means the flying things, the flying winged things, right? Laminehu, to his kind. Who here is. So let's change the colors. Because this is who, I'm going to grab this. I'll tell you what, I'm going to make it pink on the inside, and I'll make it purple on the outside, just to make it pop, so you can see the words. And so that who, which is normally hey, vav, aleph, that means him. Okay. And then we get this lovely phrase at the end, which I'm a big fan of, because it has my pirate verb in it. Now imagine your pirates, he's got an eye patch, but he's also got a telescope, so his sight has been improved. V'yar Elohim Kitov. Right, so the yar here, the root is actually longer than what you have in here. You know, we have a 3-letter verb root to every word. Well, this only has 2, Reish Aleph, but it's missing a weak letter.
Hey.
Exactly. The root is Reish Aleph Hey Ro'eh, which is to see. But in this case, we lost the Hey because it's weak. And we have vayar, and the aleph isn't making a sound because it doesn't. Well, it doesn't have a vowel on it. Vayar Elohim, so we know who saw.
Right.
We get the phrase God saw ki tov, that it was tov, that it was good. And do you remember what the special extra information that you're getting from that is? That when it says good instead, v'yehi kain means that it was so. But when it says vayar Elohim ki tov, it means it was good. Do you remember what that means to the flow of creation that we're talking about in this particular case?
I think I'm a little lost. Go ahead.
Sorry, that's okay. I think I'm speaking cryptically and weirdly, so I'll clarify.
No, go ahead.
When it says ki tov, that means it's the end of that process, and we're going to start a new process.
Oh, yes, of course.
So through we have these different flows of creation, different flows of creative activity, and when they're still going, it says ki v'yehi ken, and it was so.
For example, light and darkness, there wasn't a distinction. And then at the end of when it's repeated, it's completed, it's kitov. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Perfect.
Sorry, I need a little sign language.
Yeah, no, I didn't give you a good run into that. I just kind of switched subject matter right through the sentence. Sorry about that. Make sure we're on the same page. So just as we're passing, here are a load of different words to mean to make or to do. And the one we had in this sentence was v'yivra. Bara is to create. Here we have livroa. It's still vet resh and there's an aleph, but it's got a couple of extra letters. But that's to create something. We have lasot is to make or do. That's the general dog's body word. So there's a bunch of different ones, but they give you little clues as to kind of the kind of work that's being done. Like live not, the root is bone, and bone is to build, right? So that's different from bara, which is to create. So there's lots of different ways to make something, but we can look at the root and get a little bit more information than just being something's being made or done. We get a sense of the kind of work that's being done. So in these cases, bara, they're being created kind of seemingly from nothing. And then God does something cool. This is still on the same day of creation. That process is finished. And after it's being finished, this cool thing happens here. So it says, we get a word in between. Normally we have the verb and then who's doing it. This is the verb. This is who's doing it. God's doing it. And we get this word in between. So there's a couple of cool functions. I say cool because I think grammar's cool. How geeky is that? V'yivrach. The root is barach, which is to bless. You know, we say Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. So whenever we say Baruch, we're saying bless. And this is varech, right? But this is vayvarech. So the yod means he will bless. The vav turns it into a past tense, and he blessed. Right? Mm-hmm. And then we get this otam. And this is something we don't have in English. This is what I call a passive pronoun. So pronouns normally are like, instead of saying someone's name, you say a word that replaces their name. So for me, I would say I. My name is Moshe, but my pronoun is I when I'm talking.
Right.
But if I was to talk about you, that's also a pronoun. You is a pronoun, right?
Right.
But if you and I were talking about him, that's another pronoun.
Correct.
But in Hebrew, ani is I, ata is you, at is you to a woman, who is him, and he is she. All of those are if the person is actively doing something.
Right.
If the verb that comes afterwards, they're doing it. But what happens if you do something to me and I'm being passive? Then instead of being ani, I become ot. So all of the passive pronouns, you start off with ot, and then you put an ending. So if I do something to you, I say otka. If I was to do something to a woman and say I'm doing it to you, I'd say oteich. And there's all the different ones here. And the mem is nice and easy to spot because very often a mem ending feels plural.
Right. It does. It does naturally. Yeah.
Like hem. Like if this was active, the word would be hem. But if it's passive, it's otam. So hem is active pronoun when they're doing something. Otam is a passive pronoun when they're being done to. So God is blessing them. They're not doing anything.
Right.
He's doing, they're being done to. Does that make sense?
Right.
Beautiful. So that's useful in Hebrew. It's not useful in English because we know who's doing the verb from the order of the sentence. But in Hebrew, you can change the order. So you need to give us a clue who's being done and who's being done to. So, v'yavarek otam, God bless them. V'yavarek otam Elohim. Elohim is who's doing it. And, well, who are we talking about? Who's the them? Well, in the previous verse, it described all of these different animals being created. And then it said, Vayvarek otam, and God bless them. Vayvarek otam Elohim, God bless them. Lemor. Now, the first verb we had was v'yomer, and the root was amar, to say, right? But in this verse, here we are, second line. The lamed means two or four, and amar means to say. So lemor means to say, say. V'yavarek otam Elohim, God bless them. To say, that is, whatever it is that he's saying next is the blessing, right?
Right.
So he says, Pru urvu umilu et hamayim. This is cool because right now you think, I don't know this, but as soon as I give you a little bit of information, you're going to be like, that's that thing. Okay. So do you remember I told you that u makes it plural, right? So there's a u plural, and u plural, because God's talking to all of the stuff that he's created in the sea.
Right.
Pru is the same word as pri, as in eitz pri ose pri, fruiting trees that make fruit. So pri and pru, this is the fruiting words. Okay. So he's telling them fruit, as in
be fruitful.
Right, exactly. Right. So Rav, we call our rabbis Rav, but it doesn't mean teacher. The word for teacher is moreh or morah. Male teacher is moreh, female teacher is morah. But Rav, sorry, phone just did something it's not supposed to.
So all that time in elementary school when I was called a moron, my teacher was actually meaning I was a teacher. Wow.
Very nice, very nice.
Wow. I feel better about myself now.
Chas v'sholem. No one would ever take you for that. But the reason we call the rabbi Rav is it's not that it means teacher, but it means great. So it's an honorific term. We're saying big, great rabbi, teach me something. It's a lovely way to refer to someone that you respect, right?
Yeah, and often someone who's a particular teacher or something that's honored and revered, even though he's not a rabbi, will be called a Rav. So
absolutely. So Rav means great or many. So Urvu means to become many, or as we classically refer to it, multiply. So Pru Urvu means be fruitful and multiply. And then this phrase, umilu et hamayim. And milah here is to fill something up. So it's be fruitful and multiply and fill up the waters. Et hamayim, right?
Right.
So it goes on to say biyamim. In, bet as a prefix means in or with. Yam Yom is day, but Yam is sea, and Yamim is seas in the sea. So fill up the waters in the seas. So, but the question is, what's the blessing? And this is what's cool. If I say, "Oh, mighty bearded one, your beard should grow for 1,000 years," you think, "Thank you very much. Great." But if God says your beard will grow for 1,000 years,
that means
that's going to happen.
I'm going to live for 1,000 years.
Right. You're going to live for 1,000 years. Your beard grow for 1,000 years. It'll be a very snazzy beard. Already is it's very sexy at the moment. But God is speaking this into existence. When God said there will be light, there was light because God said there would be. The act of saying it makes it happen. So when God blesses these things and says, you will be fruitful, you will multiply, and you will fill up the seas, fill up the waters in the seas, that's what happens.
Right. And let's carry this to such a beautiful, promising thing all through the Tanakh.
Yeah.
Anytime you hear Hashem declare something, He's created that. He's not saying, I hope you can do this. I believe you can do it. I trust in you. No, He says, and you will do this.
Right.
Right. And I will redeem my people. It's like He's already redeemed them. You hear me? Moshe, He said it in the beginning in the Torah. When He says it, doesn't mean He's going to do it. He has done it.
We're so used to the existence of Israel right now because it's been 75 years.
Right.
So, like, I'm not quite 75 yet. As long as I've been around, there's been in Israel. So it's easy for me to forget how miraculous it is. But when you read through the prophets, it says, I'll bring you into the land of Israel, and you're going to be living there, and then you're going to make a mistake, and you're going to have to leave, but then I'll bring you back. And it says it thousands of years before we even entered the land. He was talking about when He's going to bring us back into the land. And so anyone who's not religious looks at that and goes, yeah, well, that's what happened. Yeah, but we knew this thousands of years before it even happened. Right. That's the amazing thing about this.
And every Jew knows that whenever they hear the mantra from the river to the sea, let Palestine be free, they know, it's
don't
not
worry
about
it, man.
Now, obviously,
we've been told.
Hashem has the decision, but He's the one that made the decision to return.
Yeah. He brought us back
to the land.
That's the crazy. Never has there been a people displaced for so long to return to a land and decolonize it.
Right.
Like, that's the crazy thing is the Jews.
They're decolonizers, not colonizers.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, if you look at the Middle East, now, I'm not trying to start a fight here or anything, but there are 27 countries that surround Israel that all speak Arabic, and the language of Arabic came from Saudi Arabia. But the fact that everyone around speaks Arabic, that's an empire. In Arabic, it's called a caliphate. Right. You roll out and you say, everyone's going to join my religion, everyone's going to speak my language. I'm going to conquer this area. They did that, and then the Jews have reversed that, and they didn't do it by their own strength, because we've never been mistaken for a strong, powerful, numerous people. Oh. We're the ones that everyone was looking down on, tiny and quiet and weak and keeping to ourselves, often ghettoized. So how is it that Jews have become so powerful and so successful? If not by God. It's only God that can do it. And now people look at Israel and they go, it's the most powerful collection of people in the Middle East. Right. Still the tiniest, but still crazy powerful, crazy successful. Why? Only by God. Only God can do something like this.
Right.
And so exactly as you said, God said, you're going to come back. You're going to come back.
Right.
Who even worries about it? We're back.
I would encourage, because this is a great time to stop, I would encourage everyone who has been studying with us to take time when you're reading the Torah and you hear God make a statement, and you will do this, and God said this, just write them down and look at all the promising things that God has created in Torah. That you just think, oh, it's just a statement. No, if it's Hashem, He's not just making a statement.
Yeah. And all of this was written before these events.
Absolutely.
So if you see something in the prophets and you go, did that happen in history? If it did, you're looking at a miracle, because we got promised this beforehand. 2 more words of this, 3 more words of this, because Vavarech otam, and He blessed them, Elohim God did, Lemor, to say, Pru urvu umilu et hamayim, be fruitful and multiply and fill up the waters, be a meme in the seas. And then it says, Vaha'of, and the flying things, Yerev Ba'aretz, And Rav here is the same word as the Rav in Urvu. It's the multiplying, and Yirav means he will increase, he will multiply ba'aretz in the land. And this is how we finish each day of creation. So I think it's worth just finishing on this one.
Yes.
Yehi means it will be. Vayehi means it was. Vayehi erev, and it was evening. Vayehi voka, and it was morning. Yom Chamishi, day 5, which means when we come back for our next lesson, we'll be dealing with Yom Shishi, day 6.
Yom Shishi.
And because that's the last day of creation, that's when we get people. And I'm super excited about that.
This is going to be a great conversation. It's going to be amazing. Let's switch back to our faces here so we can close out the text. Even though we forgot to do it during class, I'll forgive you. I'll find a way to give you a signal to do that in the future. I have no controls over here, so it's not like I have a board to switch.
Sorry, that's right.
And folks, basically, thank you for being patient with us, because we're not Joe Rogan and God knows who else. It's just two schmoes out here trying to teach something that we've learned, and be patient with us while we make noise and look goofy and don't do things right. But we really do appreciate studying the Torah. And just a reminder to everyone, if you really want to help Israel, obviously you can donate and give. There are great causes to give, but study Torah, elevate yourself. Study Torah, elevate yourself. We can do this. We can change the world around us. And I do believe that we're doing that. There are miracles happening right now in the nation of Israel during combat. I'm taking a list of them. So every time I hear a new miracle and where I heard it from, I write it down. And it's amazing what's happening. It's obvious that Hashem is fighting on behalf of the people of Israel. So anything that you want to say in closing?
We're just starting to get good news, and people are being rescued.
Yes.
And at the moment of recording, this video is going to go out later. So Bezrat Hashem, by the time it goes out, many more will be rescued. But
yes,
praying for those, especially those children.
Well, Moshe, I will be in touch with you, and we're going to say shalom to everyone, and we'll talk to you later. Shalom, shalom.
Thank you for your time, guys.
Yes. Pause.